I'm Wendy Venturini for Wix Filters, and I love engines. I'm here with Bob Dell, an engine specialist at Chip Ganassi Racing. Now, Bob, an interesting story about you here at Ganassi, because you and your son both work in the engine department at Ganassi. That's kind of a cool background.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually work for Ganassi here, and Bobby works for Hendry. So, and as y'all know, we get our engines from Hendry. So, yeah, it's always been good. We've been in and out of different places while we both worked in the racing industry. So, and this is probably the longest time we've actually worked together, in the same team.
Yeah, I was excited to talk to you about your history growing up and your son's love for engines, because it runs across the family. What did you do growing up to get your son involved in racing and his love for cars?
Well, he doesn't know anything different than racing. He's been around it his whole life. So, when he was old enough to go, he's been hanging around engine shops and stuff like that, pretty much, since he was old enough to get up there and go. I used to set him up at some machines in the machine shops, doing repetitive things, and he's just learned all along the way,
Did you make it a conscious effort when you would go out to the backyard in the garage to work on a car to take Bobby back out there and teach him something about engines?
Well, I never had to make the effort because he was always right there, So it was just something he always wanted to do. I traveled for a number of years, when he was younger. So when I was around, he was like right there. So, wherever I was going, or our backyard shop was always a race shop, somebody's race shop. So that's where we always ended up, like on the weekends and in the evenings and stuff like that.
Now, most engine lovers and engine specialists like yourselves love to put engines together. I'm sure you've put some together in your backyard a time or two, haven't you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's where I got my start, was in the garage at home. My parents were from in different places, but racing was just always in my blood. And I converted my parents' home garage into an engine shop like at an early age. So, yeah, and my grandfather was really the one that got me going. He was always had something going on with a car, so I was like Bobby. I was always around it because I was always at his side.
I love to hear stories about generations going back in time and shade tree mechanics and how you learn to love cars and then you naturally have a love for engines. What are some projects you've worked on through the years growing up, or watching your grandfather, or with Bobby next to you as your son, that you've worked on through the years on car projects that have been some of your favorites?
Well, I started out, really bloodying my knuckles on, mid-50s Chevrolets. My grandfather would buy them. We'd fix them up and he'd sell them. And then, that turned into V8s, and, then it evolved into, big blocks and all kinds of different stuff. So, but I took the engines, and that was just always my thing, more than the cars. The engines were always my thing. So, I've done, restorations, like Corvette engine restorations and all kinds of different stuff over the years. But, that's always been like my sideline. Racing's I've always been lucky enough to make a living in racing, let me put it to you that way.
Well, that's a good thing. They go hand in hand. Any project of yours personally that you've worked on through the years, or any baby of yours, a hot rod?
Well, I've have several several different ones over the years. I was lucky enough sort of to be in the thick of the muscle car era. So whether it was Pontiacs or GTOs or 442s or Chevelles or Camaros or Corvettes, whatever. I've had them all.
You're talking my style now.
Yeah. I've had them all, worked on them all, worked on them for a lot of other people too. So, that's really, you learn about all that stuff, and the deeper you get, the more you learn, and the more you're driven, and it just goes on and on.
All right, as you have grandchildren now, how about working the future generation of shade tree mechanics and getting their love for engines and their love for cars started at a young age?
Well, that's already going on. I had to, my grandson, which is my oldest grandchild, is 4 now. And at an early age, he knew what a bow tie meant. He knew that was Chevrolet. But his dad also works in the sport. And so, yeah, they're surrounded by it. It's going to happen. They're not going to get away from it either.
What do you think the importance is about the correlation between NASCAR, the love for motorsports, and a love for engines and growing up in the car world as a shade tree mechanic?
Well, the biggest thing with it for anybody, they learn to use their hands and their head at a young age. It's not about looking at a computer screen or a TV. It's about, looking at a project or whatever's in front of you and figuring out how to work on it and how to fix it, and that correlation with your brain and your hands. And I think it's a really good thing for young people.
And that also includes your Wix filters. For Wix filters, I'm Wendy Venturini. This is Bob Dell, engine specialist at Chip Ganassi Racing.